Here is the bad news for Christine Blasey Ford. There's a letter that is now out from Christine Blasey Ford's ex-boyfriend. And this letter is not good for Christine Blasey Ford. It is a statement given under penalty of perjury. So if the person's lying, then they could be brought up on charges. And here's what it says. This was turned over to Fox News. I blank am a current resident of California. I first met Christine Blasey, now Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, in 1989 or 1990 in California. From 1990 to 1991, I was just friends with Ford. From approximately 1992 to 1998, I was in a relationship with Dr. Ford. I found her truthful and maintained no animus towards her. During our time dating, Dr. Ford never brought up anything regarding her experience as a victim of sexual assault, harassment, or misconduct. Dr. Ford never mentioned Brett Kavanaugh. During some of the time we were dating, Dr. Ford lived with Monica L. McLean, who I understood to be her lifelong best friend. During that time, it was my understanding that McLean was interviewing for jobs with the FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office. I witnessed Dr. Ford help McLean prepare for a potential polygraph exam. Dr. Ford explained in detail what to expect, how polygraphs worked, and helped McLean become familiar and less nervous about the exam. Dr. Ford was able to help because of her background in psychology. Dr. Ford and I lived together while we were dating and stayed together in a long-distance relationship when Dr. Ford moved to Hawaii sometime around 1998, although I'm not sure of the particular year and it might have been a bit earlier or later. While visiting Ford in Hawaii, we traveled around the Hawaiian Islands, including one time on a propeller plane. Dr. Ford never indicated a fear of flying. To the best of my recollection, Dr. Ford never expressed a fear of closed quarters, tight spaces, or places with only one exit. I assisted Dr. Ford with finding a place to live in California. She ended up living in a very small 500-square-foot house with one door. Despite trying to maintain a long-distance relationship, I ended the relationship once I discovered Dr. Ford was unfaithful while living in Hawaii. After the breakup, I took her off the credit card we shared, but nearly 1 year later, I noticed Dr. Ford had been charging the card and charged about $600 worth of merchandise. When confronted, Dr. Ford said she did not use the card, but later admitted to the use after I threatened to involve fraud prevention. I didn't speak to Ford again until about 2002, when Ford contacted me briefly. After that, I hadn't thought much about her until I saw her story in the Washington Post on Sunday, September 16, 2018. I do not want to become involved in this process or current investigation, but wanted to be truthful about what I know. So pretty damning stuff from her ex-boyfriend about Christine Blasey Ford, really undercutting her veracity. In just a second, I'll explain why. So this letter suggests a couple of reasons why Dr. Ford's veracity has been challenged. One, she never mentioned for years anything about this sexual assault and never mentioned Kavanaugh. Now, that doesn't necessarily undercut all of her credibility. According to Ford, she never said anything until 2012. But it does underscore that for a lady who says that she was very disturbed about everything that happened to her with regard to Kavanaugh, not to mention it for 6-7 years, and also to be able to travel in prop planes. Like, I'm nervous about traveling in prop planes. Like, propeller planes feel like they're going to go down at any moment. And she was traveling in prop planes in Hawaii. She was staying, apparently, according to this guy, in tiny spaces with no worries about claustrophobia. She testified in front of the Senate, all of this. Also, she testified in front of the Senate she'd never coached anybody with regard to a polygraph. Remember, she made a big deal out of taking a polygraph, and she still won't turn over her notes from her psychiatrist. She turned over her polygraph notes, but her polygraph notes raised some questions of their own, such as, in the polygraph notes, the original polygraph note said, before she took the polygraph, that she was sexually assaulted in the early 80s. She crossed out early. Nobody knows why, because supposedly the assault happened in 1982. Then she took the polygraph, and then she passed the polygraph, but she testified under oath that she did not coach anyone on a polygraph. Now, her ex-boyfriend says that's not true. Here is her testifying about this under oath.
I didn't expect it to be as long as it was going to be, so it was a little bit stressful.
Have you ever given tips or advice to somebody who was looking to take a polygraph test?
Never.
Okay, and it turns out that is a serious question for her. Were you lying about that? So Senator Chuck Grassley has now sent a letter to the attorneys for this woman, for Christine Blasey Ford, and he asked for material evidence relevant to the allegations. He says he wants some corroborative evidence. He says he wants the notes from the therapy sessions that Dr. Ford discussed and that she turned over to the Washington Post. Right? He says that he wants copies of all video or audio recordings produced during the course of the polygraph examination of Dr. Ford, which she will not turn over. And then he says the full details of Dr. Ford's polygraph are particularly important because the Senate Judiciary Committee has received a sworn statement from a longtime boyfriend of Dr. Ford's stating that he personally witnessed Dr. Ford coaching a friend on polygraph examinations. When asked under oath in the hearing whether she'd ever given any tips or advice to someone who was planning on taking a polygraph, Dr. Ford replied, never. This statement raises specific concerns about the reliability of her polygraph examination results. The Senate therefore needs this information. So she's got a credibility problem there as well. Then she also has another credibility problem. It turns out that she said in her Senate testimony over and over again that she was in therapy in 2012 because she had a fight with her husband about building a second front door. And the reason that she wanted a second front door is because she had security concerns because she was still deeply disturbed about her alleged sexual assault at the hands of Brett Kavanaugh. Well, now it turns out that that's a really dicey story. Real Clear Investigations, Paul Sperry over at Real Clear Investigations has a piece in which he says real estate and other records undercut a key part of Christine Blasey Ford's account of why she finally came forward with charges of attempted rape against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh after some 30 years. Ford testified last week that she had never revealed the details of the alleged attack until 2012 when she was in couples therapy with her husband. She said the memories percolated up as they revisited a disagreement they'd had over her insistence on installing a second front door when they remodeled their Palo Alto, California home. The need to explain a decision her husband didn't understand pushed her to say she wanted the door to alleviate symptoms of claustrophobia and panic attacks based on the alleged assault. She was specifically asked about this by Dianne Feinstein. Feinstein asked, "Is that the reason for the second front door is claustrophobia?" And Ford said, "Correct." But documents reveal the door was installed years before as part of an addition and has been used by renters and even a marriage counseling business. The door was not an escape route, but an entrance route, said an attorney familiar with the ongoing congressional investigation. It appears the real plan for the second front door was to rent out a separate room. Palo Alto city records show a building permit for the additional room and exterior door was issued to Ford and her husband on February 4th, 2008, more than 4 years before the May 2012 therapy session where she first identified Kavanaugh as her attacker. All the remodeling was completed by February 2010. The only additional permits issued to Ford at her Palo Alto address are for solar panels on the roof, a solar hot water system in the garage, and an electric vehicle charge station for the driveway. Dr. Randall, who is the marriage therapist, expressed concerns about her real estate transaction and prior relationship with Ford being reported. She said, "I don't want it mentioned. It's personal." Since the second front door was installed, students from local colleges have lived in the additional room with the private door. So, in other words, there are a lot of holes in her story. We don't know where. We don't know when. We don't know that she's actually claustrophobic. We certainly know that she's okay with flying for the most part, or at least she does it a fair bit. We also know that that second front door story has some holes in it, all of which suggest that maybe there are some serious questions that need to be asked about Ford's account. And this week, it seems more questions have been raised about that account than have actually been raised about Brett Kavanaugh.